Welcome back to Mental Mike's Recovery Radio, where recovery meets discovery. I am Mental Mike, and this is episode 15. You have moved past learning the vocabulary of recovery. You are beginning to speak the language fluently. And this week, I want to take you somewhere deeper into the territory of the inner world, into the relationship between your psyche, your body, and your spirit. One of the things I have always believed, and what the unified flux model is built on, is that addiction is far more than a behavioral problem. It is a spiritual crisis, an energetic imbalance, and at its root, a distorted attempt to satisfy a very real human thirst for connection and wholeness. Carl Jung said it in a way that has stayed with me for years. He said addiction is the equivalent, on a low level, of the spiritual thirst of our being for wholeness. That reframes everything. This week, we use Jung's framework to map the unconscious forces that have been driving behavior from beneath the surface. We look at the shadow, not as a dark monster, but as every part of yourself you were taught to judge, reject, or hide. Your anger, yes, but also your vulnerability, your power, your creative potential. And through a practice called active imagination, the UFM teaches us how to stop fighting these parts and start listening to them. Because what most people discover when they finally sit with the voice of their addiction is something that changes everything. It was never an enemy. It was a misguided protector. We also go into the body this week, the vagus nerve, breath work, somatic practices, the physical tools that make the psychological work possible. Because in my experience, you cannot think your way out of what the body is holding. You have to move through it. And today, I want to introduce you to Andre. Andre's story speaks directly to the heart of this week's work. Because Andre is someone who spent years fighting the parts of himself he did not know how to carry. And what he found when he finally turned toward them with curiosity instead of shame was not what he feared. His journey through Jungian shadow work, through the process of individuation, through learning to meet his own unmet needs in honest and healthy ways, maps directly onto everything I have built, into the UFM. Andre's wounds became his wisdom, and his story just might help yours do the same. So settle in, bring an open heart today, and let's go deeper together.
Okay, let's unpack this. If you're with us for week 15 of this transformation journey, you're really standing at a crucial threshold. All the psychological insights, all those practical tools for recovery, they're all ready to start weaving together now. This discussion is about that ultimate integration. It's about turning inward and really examining the relationship you have with your psyche, your body, and your spirit.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
For a lot of people, this is the week where it feels like you're moving from, just learning the vocabulary to actually speaking the language of recovery fluently.
That's a great way to put it.
And our focus today is really to walk you through the key concepts in this week's material. We're going to concentrate on some advanced practices that are designed to interrupt those ingrained cravings and truly rewire your brain for the long haul.
And the foundational wisdom for this whole phase, it comes from the unified flux model, the UFM.
Yes, created by Mike. And Mike's perspective is, I think, just so powerful and really essential here.
It is.
He argues that addiction is, it's so much more than just a behavioral problem. It's actually a spiritual crisis. It's an energetic imbalance that it manifests in substance use.
He often brings up Carl Jung, right?
He does. Jung had this quote that really resonates with the UFM. He said, addiction is the equivalent on a low level of the spiritual thirst of our being for wholeness.
Mm.
And that just reframes everything. The search for a substance becomes this fundamental human longing. It's a distorted way of trying to satisfy a real need for connection, for meaning.
So our work now is about satisfying that thirst, but in healthy ways.
In authentic, healthy ways, exactly.
Okay, so let's start by, navigating the territory of the inner world, using the psychological framework the UFM lays out. Mental Mike asks you to envision your psyche as an iceberg.
Yeah, the iceberg analogy. It's perfect.
The part that you see above the water, right? Your conscious thoughts, your to-do list, your willpower. That's just a tiny, tiny fraction of who you are.
And that huge, vast, submerged landscape below the surface, that's the unconscious. And this is where the roots of addictive behavior are often hiding. And the key player down there is what Jung called the shadow.
When we talk about the shadow, I think most people immediately jump to the evil part of me or my dark side. But the UFM clarifies that it's way more complex than that, isn't it?
It is. It's much more nuanced. The shadow is simply everything about yourself that you have judged or rejected or denied because it felt unsafe or shameful.
So it's not just anger.
No, not at all. It could be anger, yes, but it could also be your vulnerability, your sadness, even your authentic power or your creative potential. These parts you've disowned, they don't just disappear. They kind of cluster together into what are called complexes.
Okay, so a complex is like a little storm system.
A little charged storm system of psychic energy in your unconscious. That's a great way to think about it.
That sounds a little dangerous.
Well, in a way it is. Because when one of these shadow complexes gets triggered, say by stress or an emotional situation, it has the power to absolutely hijack your conscious intentions.
And that's the moment, that feeling of being suddenly, I don't know, possessed by a craving that just overrides every rational thought you had a minute ago.
That's it. That's the complex taking over.
It explains why willpower alone so often fails. You're just operating from the tip of the iceberg, trying to fight this massive energetic force under the surface with just conscious thought.
Exactly. And traditional approaches, they try to use repression, just push the shadow down further. The UFM teaches the complete opposite. We turn toward that complex.
With curiosity.
With radical curiosity and compassion. We don't try to get rid of the energy. We try to understand it and then reintegrate it to free that trapped life force.
So this whole process of recovery, then, is directly linked to Jung's idea of individuation.
The journey towards psychological wholeness. Yes. Mike frames recovery not as just stopping a bad habit, but as actively becoming a whole person.
And this journey has stages, or maybe obstacles. The first one you have to confront is the persona, the mask.
The mask we wear for the world. And for so many people in recovery, that mask was incredibly rigid. The perfect employee, the strong friend, the person who has it all together.
But underneath it was just hiding all this anxiety and inadequacy.
Deep anxiety. So recovery means letting the mask drop and accepting the messy, authentic reality of who you are.
And once that mask is down, we face the shadow. But the UFM also emphasizes balancing the anima and animus. That sounds pretty complex.
It can be, but let's make it practical. The anima is the feminine principle in men. The animus is the masculine in women. There are internal opposites.
And when they're out of balance,
they cause problems. For example, if a man suppresses his anima, his capacity for emotion, for vulnerability, he might turn to a substance to numb that unmet need. If a woman suppresses her animus, her assertion, her boundaries, she might use a substance to feel, empowered. Balancing them means finding that wholeness inside yourself.
So every time you choose to feel an emotion, instead of numbing it, every craving you consciously navigate, it's not just a small win. It's a step toward becoming a more integrated whole person that reframes the whole struggle.
And what's really fascinating here is that the UFM insists the goal isn't some fixed, perfect destination. Individuation is a lifelong process. You're recognizing that the struggle itself is the path to becoming more authentic.
Here's where it gets really practical then. How do we actually engage with this massive unconscious material? The UFM suggests using active imagination.
Right. Active imagination. It's a tool to create a direct bridge from your conscious mind right to the shadow.
And this isn't just daydreaming.
No, it's a very conscious, disciplined process. You engage with images or figures that come up from your unconscious. The key element is dialogue. You literally sit down and talk to the craving.
The material for this week encourages you to personify it. Give it a name, a voice, a form. What do people usually find when they finally do that, when they listen to that part of them that drives the compulsion?
They almost always discover that the voice of addiction is the voice of a misguided protector.
A protector.
Yeah. It might say something like, "I'm here because the world hurts and I just wanted to keep you safe." Or, "I was the only reliable friend you had when you were so lonely." It's profound. You realize the addicted part started as an attempt, a really damaging attempt, but still an attempt to meet a real unmet need.
That's a huge insight. The thing that seems so destructive was originally a form of self-defense. And the UFM connects this deep psychological work directly to neuroscience, right? This isn't just a mental exercise.
Absolutely not. When you engage in this conscious dialogue, you're lighting up two crucial networks in your brain at the same time. The default mode network, the DMN, which is all about your inner self and your history.
And the executive control network, your focus and impulse control.
Exactly. You're making the thinking, controlled part of your brain talk directly to the emotional, historical part.
And that's literally how you build new neural pathways.
That's it. Instead of that automatic superhighway from trigger to craving to use, you're building a new path. It goes trigger to craving to conscious dialogue, and then to need recognition. That pause, that's where your choice lives.
Speaking of rewiring the brain, Mike frames meditation as one of the most precise tools for neuroplasticity we have.
He does. Because consistent, targeted practice doesn't just make you feel calmer. It physically changes your brain.
Yeah.
We have clear evidence it thickens the prefrontal cortex, the CEO of your brain, impulse control, and it calms the amygdala, your brain's alarm system.
So let's get into the toolkit and the study guide. We can start with the 3 fundamental breathing practices. The foundation, of course, is diaphragmatic breathing.
This is non-negotiable. But the UFM emphasizes a key detail here, the extended exhale. You have to count, 6 to 8 seconds for the exhale.
Why is that so important?
That long exhale is the direct biological signal to your vagus nerve that you are safe. It hits the off switch for the stress cycle. It cuts the cortisol that's fueling the craving.
Okay, building on that, we have box breathing, the 4-4-4-4. This is used by high-stress professionals, right? Military, first responders.
Yep. The strict rhythm forces your prefrontal cortex to stay focused. It's like a workout for your attention span. And crucially, it improves your heart rate variability, your HRV.
And HRV is basically the resilience of your nervous system.
It's the springiness. High HRV means you bounce back from stress quickly. Box breathing builds that flexibility.
Then for those acute moments of panic or insomnia, there's the 4-7-8 breath. Mike calls this a natural tranquilizer.
It's incredibly powerful. That long hold and even longer exhale create a mild, controlled state of beneficial hypoxia. It acts directly on your brain chemistry and brings a very rapid sense of calm.
So those are the kind of structural tools. The next 3 in the guide are more psychological and energetic. Let's talk about grounding meditation.
This is so critical for anyone who feels unmoored or dissociated, which is common when you're processing old stuff. You visualize yourself rooted deep into the earth. It sounds abstract, but it's an energetic anchor.
So it stabilizes you.
It stabilizes the system. You discharge the chaotic energy down and draw stable energy up. It physically reduces that feeling of being disconnected.
And then maybe the most critical one for integrating the shadow, loving kindness or metta practice.
Yes, addiction absolutely thrives on shame and self-hatred. When you hate yourself, you medicate yourself. It's that simple. Loving kindness meditation directly targets that destructive internal relationship.
How does repeating a phrase help?
By consistently repeating simple phrases like, "May I treat myself with kindness," you are literally retraining your neural pathways to default towards self-compassion. And self-compassion is the absolute prerequisite for shadow work. You cannot heal what you hate.
And the final tool is the third eye meditation.
This one cultivates intuitive wisdom. The ability to discern is such a high-level recovery skill. It helps you distinguish between that urgent, desperate voice of addiction and the clear, calm guidance of your integrated self. It's about learning to hear your own wisdom.
So if we connect all of this to the bigger picture, all the inner work we've talked about, the Jungian map, the psychological stuff, it's all limited if your body is stuck in chronic stress.
That's the beautiful integration of the unified flux model. The vagus nerve is the biological highway connecting the mind and the body. It is the bridge to that calm, parasympathetic state of rest and digest.
And if you have low vagal tone, you have like resilience. Cravings feel more intense. So Mike gives us 3 really quick, actionable ways to strengthen that vagal tone, like a biological reset button.
The first one is humming or chanting. And I know it sounds almost silly, but it is immediate. The low-frequency vibration, that deep sound, mechanically stimulates the vagus nerve right through your throat.
Yeah.
It signals safety to your brain. Instant calm.
The second is, well, it's a bit more intense, cold water exposure.
A powerful physical reset. When you splash ice-cold water on your face or take a quick cold shower, you trigger the ancient mammalian dive reflex.
Yeah.
It's a massive hardwired activation of your parasympathetic system.
But there's another piece to it, right? The dopamine.
This is the key insight from the UFM. Cold exposure also causes a huge spike in your natural dopamine production, sometimes up to 250%.
Wow.
It's a clean, healthy, sustainable way to address the dopamine deficiency that drives so much of the craving cycle. You get a natural reward without the addictive substance.
And the third, the simplest daily practice, is vigorous gargling.
With cold water.
Yeah.
You are literally giving your vagus nerve a workout. It stimulates the pharyngeal branch of the vagus nerve. Doing it every day is like strength training for your nervous system. You're building your baseline resilience one gargle at a time.
The application here is so vital. These are your proactive tools. You don't wait for the craving to be a 10 out of 10. You intervene early.
As soon as you feel the stress creeping in.
Exactly. You take 5 minutes for humming or a cold face splash, and that small act buys you the biological stability and the time you need to use active imagination and make a conscious choice.
So what does this all mean when we put it all together? The answer from the UFM is integration. The psychological material, the shadow, it's not just an abstract thought. It's physically held in your body as tension, as chaotic energy.
You can't just think your way out of it.
You can't. You cannot fully integrate the shadow without these physical somatic practices.
The core energetic truth Mike teaches is that energy follows attention. Addiction is a pattern of trapped, chaotic energy.
So by consciously choosing your focus, through breathing, through imagination, through metta, you are redirecting that life force away from the compulsion and toward intentional growth, toward wholeness.
The UFM also uses these powerful archetypes to give meaning to the struggle, the hero's journey.
Your pain, your withdrawal, your cravings, these are not failures. They're the necessary trial phase where the hero finds the treasure. And that treasure is the wisdom and the strength you develop through the fight.
And that leads right into the wounded healer archetype.
Exactly. Mike reminds us that your deepest wounds, once you actively work with them and heal them, they become the source of your greatest capacity to help other people, to feel true empathy. You're transforming your history into wisdom.
Mike's ultimate philosophical insight ties it all together beautifully. He says we are borrowed molecules living on borrowed time.
And that perspective is so liberating. Because if your physical form is just a temporary pattern, then the rigid, chaotic patterns of addiction are also temporary. They're also changeable. You are not defined by the pattern. You become the conscious author of your new story.
That is the goal of this whole integration week. Your study guide has 5 hands-on exercises to help you weave this into your daily life, including things like bioelectric reset breathing and somatic emotional clearing,
which uses shaking and sound to physically release that stored emotional energy from the body.
It's powerful stuff.
Remember, these practices, they aren't temporary fixes. They are lifetime skills. Consistent engagement is what strengthens the neural pathways and improves your vagal tone. This is sacred work. It's the profound work of becoming fully consciously human.
We want to leave you with one final provocative thought from the study guide to take into your week. Take some time to really journal on this. What shadow aspect, that piece of you that you judged and rejected, have you been most actively medicating with substances?
And now that you're aware of this vulnerable part, what does it actually need from you? Not from a substance, but from you. How can you begin meeting that need in a healthy, integrated way starting today? We really look forward to continuing this conversation with you.
I built my whole identity around never looking weak. That was the rule. Smile hard. Talk loud. Keep everybody laughing. Keep the energy moving. Nobody asks questions when you're the fun guy. And honestly, that persona saved me for a while. The podcast talked about Jung's persona being a mask. That hit me immediately because I knew exactly what mine was. Confident, fearless, always good in a room. But underneath all that, I was lonely as hell and exhausted. Cocaine helped me perform the version of myself I thought people wanted. Alcohol helped me survive the crash afterward. That became my whole cycle. Party. Perform. Disappear emotionally. Repeat. What shook me listening to this episode was hearing addiction described as a spiritual crisis instead of just a behavioral problem. Because that felt true in a way I can't explain logically. Drugs weren't just numbing pain for me. They were filling some kind of emptiness I didn't know how to name. The podcast quoted Jung saying addiction is a spiritual thirst for wholeness. Man, that sentence haunted me, because deep down, I think I've spent my whole life trying to feel whole. The shadow work part got intense too, especially when they talked about rejected parts of yourself becoming complexes. That explained cravings better than anything I've ever heard. Because cravings never felt random to me. They felt personal, like some hidden part of me suddenly taking control. The active imagination thing sounded weird at first. Talking to your craving like it's a person? But one night, I actually tried it after hearing this podcast. Sat alone in my apartment and asked myself, what are you really trying to do for me? And the answer that came up honestly scared me. The voice in my head said, I'm trying to make sure nobody can hurt you. That wrecked me. Because suddenly, addiction stopped looking like pure self-destruction. It looked like a damaged survival strategy. A protector that got completely out of control. That changed how I see myself now. Not innocent. Not free from responsibility. But human. The loving kindness meditation part was probably hardest for me. I can show compassion to strangers all day long. I've always been good at that. But sitting quietly, trying to tell myself, may I treat myself with kindness, honestly made me uncomfortable. Because self-hatred became normal for me years ago, especially after addiction got ugly. The lies, the cheating, the manipulative behavior. I started believing I was fundamentally toxic. But this podcast kept coming back to one thing over and over. You cannot heal what you hate. That line stayed with me. Because every time I tried recovering through shame, I relapsed harder. Shame never healed me. It just made me hide better. The vagus nerve stuff was wild too. I started doing the humming thing they mentioned in the car before meetings. Felt ridiculous at first, but my body calmed down. Actually calmed down. That blew my mind, because for years my nervous system only knew two settings, amped up or chemically shut down. Now I'm learning there's another option. Regulation. That's new for me. And maybe that's what this whole journey actually is. Not becoming perfect. Not erasing the shadow. Learning how to stop running from the parts of myself I buried underneath substances and performance. The craziest thing is, the more honest I become about who I actually am, the less I feel like using. I never expected that. Maybe addiction survives through fragmentation. And maybe healing begins the moment you finally stop abandoning yourself internally.
If something in this conversation stood out to you, don't ignore that. That's usually where the work begins. Recovery isn't about trying harder. It's about understanding what's actually happening and learning how to respond differently over time. If you're ready to take the next step, you can find resources, guidance, and support at soulrecoveryhub.com. Take what you heard today, sit with it, and keep moving forward. Copyright 2026, Mental Mike, all rights reserved.